Hello everyone, welcome and welcome back to the Product Marketing Festival in APAC. With product marketing experts from Singapore, Australia, China mainland, Hong Kong, Malaysia, India, and many other regions. We'll be covering all product marketing aspects from sales enablement, go-to-market strategy, to customer onboarding, positioning, and messaging. We got them all. You are guaranteed to walk away with tons of new ideas and strategies to take your product to the next level. I would also like to take this chance to say a big thank you to all festival speakers. We cannot make this without you. Also, thanks for the support from iClick Interactive. Their presentation, Discover the Secret to Adapting Data-Driven Marketing in China, is scheduled at day 1 afternoon, 3:30 Singapore time. I highly recommend it if you have not signed up for it yet. Last but not the least, if you would like to interact with our speakers and other attendees, please join our group page link at the end. We look forward to the Q&A session and your feedback over there. Relax and enjoy the festival.
iClick Interactive's marketing technology platform is fueled by data. Our data helps to drive, connect, and enable every step of all marketing activities conducted on our platform. When marketing to China, the key challenge lies in the lack of quality and deployable data to start with. And this is where we come in to help. Every brand has its own target segment, and there is no one-size-fits-all solution. With our proprietary keyword-based audience identification engine, a unique solution among online marketing technology platforms in China, we help brands to move from rigid, predefined audience categories to intuitively defining their own custom target segments. The intelligence comes with in-depth audience knowledge in a multi-dimensional manner, from demographics and geographies to psychographics, giving brands meaningful understanding of their target segments on what they do, what they like, and what they care about. Brands can then readily size up their total accessible market opportunity and decide if it's right or big enough for them. And we don't just take a snapshot of these segments. We're capable of monitoring their changes over time, helping brands to drive the marketing funnel down from potential audiences and brand followers to website visitors and owned users. Brands can also benchmark specific product portfolio followers with actual sales to identify areas for growth. Getting to know your competitors is just as important as knowing your customers. Our platform allows brands to learn about their own position in the market as well as that of their competitors, helping brands to adjust their overall brand strategy. While the intelligence is good for decision-making purpose, brands can actually activate the data right away on the same platform via our massive media network in China, delivering messages to their target segments via the right channel, on the right device, at the right time. We also help brands conduct online-offline conversion by mapping their audience hotspots in the Chinese cities to develop data-driven, location-based retail strategy, intelligently converting online traffic to offline leads and realize smart online-offline integration. Having an accurate grasp of data intelligence is a vital first step to any successful marketing initiatives. With our ever-growing data capabilities, we look forward to empowering brands on their China-targeted marketing initiatives.
Hi, and thank you for joining me to learn more about how to ace your next photo or video shoot. During this session, I'm going to equip you with the fundamentals of planning a successful shoot. Whether you're organizing a photo shoot, standing on the sidelines, budgeting for one, or supporting your team, you'll learn the 5 Ps of product shoots that you need to know. Before we jump into the content, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Lillian Jardine. My background is in hotels, hospitality, and education. And at points in my career, I've attended photo shoots monthly. So I'll share my experience with you so that you can get the results you desire out of your next shoot. So, why is it important to ace your next product shoot? It's because imagery is important. Images can capture the attention of an audience and communicate a message within seconds. Your images represent your product's perceived value and quality. In a recent study, 83% of US smartphone users surveyed, in a survey by Field Agent, found product images to be either very or extremely influential in their digital purchasing decisions. And not only is imagery important to consumers, but as product marketers, we need images and videos for our social media, for our print advertising, for our out-of-home advertising and websites. Stock photography definitely has its place, but original photography that shows your actual business, your products, and your staff is much more engaging for consumers. And for videos, website landing pages that include a video have shown to increase visitor conversion rates by up to 79%. So let's get to know the 5 Ps. To get the most out of your next shoot, you need to think about the 5 Ps: preparation, place, people, product, and props. Before we proceed with the 5 Ps, I think it's important to first assess if you can achieve the results you want in regards to photos and videos by conducting a shoot in-house. Maybe you just need 1 or 2 photos for a small campaign and you have a good camera available to use. If in-house isn't feasible, it's time to contact a professional photographer or videographer agency for help. So, the first of the 5 Ps is preparation. And this is where the success of your shoot really lies. All of the following preparation points you should include in one document, which is your brief. When planning your shoot, you really need to consider the audience and what story you want to tell them. This is going to influence your whole shoot and the information that you give to the photographer or videographer. You also have to think about where the photos are going to be used. If they're being used in a brochure or a flyer, for example, they might need to be vertical in orientation, whereas for websites, images are normally horizontal. And if your video is going to be viewed on a mobile phone, for example, you need to consider whether you want to take it in portrait. If you're choosing to do an advertising campaign where you're going to be putting text over an image, is there a clear space on that image for text? So include these things in your shoot brief. I'd also recommend early on thinking about ways that you want to maximize your shoot from a content perspective, because you've got your product there and you may have models there. And so this is a great time to try and maximize your content. Can you take some behind the scenes shots, for example, which you'll use on social media? If you have a model posing with a product, you could ask them about their experience with the product and have the potential to use this quote and a photo together as a part of a campaign. So think about how you can get even more content from the experience. It's really important to communicate your objectives and expectations with your photographer or shoot director. Include in your brief how many photos you're expecting to receive. You can ask your photographer if your expectations are realistic for the amount of time that is allocated for the shoot. In order to get the images and video that you're really looking for, you have to communicate the branding guidelines and your vision. One of the best ways to do this is to create a mood board or a storyboard for video. In a mood board, you would generally gather 5 to 15 images that show examples of the outcomes you're looking for. Less is more, because sometimes too many images can harm the essence of the atmosphere you're trying to communicate. A storyboard is for video, and it should include things like the visual aspects, the storyline, the voiceovers, any dialogue, the style of music that you want, B-roll, and the overall vision for your video. And working on a mood board or a storyboard ahead of time really helps to ensure that the final product is exactly what you envisioned. I really recommend collaborating with your photographer or videographer in person or via Zoom, so you can really express what you want the images to feel like, as well as the creative elements and nuances of the brief. Although you can do this in writing, it's not quite the same as actually explaining it to them in person. And when you do this, your photographer will probably have some great ideas and expertise to add to your vision as well. Some other key aspects to include in your brief include the expected delivery date of the final images or video. Post-production can sometimes take longer than expected. And if you're working towards a product launch, for example, or a magazine advertising deadline, it's really important to discuss this deadline with your photoshoot team, and include the deadline in your brief and in a contract. Most agencies and photographers will come back to you with a contract. It should include things like who owns the images and exclusivity rights. For example, if you don't want the photographer selling or using the images elsewhere, and if the contract is bound by a time period that you can use the images for. Most of these items are quite negotiable. So the higher level of exclusivity you require and the longer the time period you want to use the images for, the more expensive it generally is. In order for things to run smoothly, I also recommend including in your brief where the photographer needs to send the invoice. That way everything will run smoothly, and hopefully, if everything goes well, you'll be working with them again. Now, to some very practical aspects to prepare. A realistic shoot timetable should be coordinated between you and the photo shoot team. And it needs to include things like mutually agreeable breaks, arrival time, departure time, things like that. The timetable should be distributed to all of the stakeholders prior to the shoot day so that everyone is on the same page and working towards the same outcomes. Other logistics to organize include getting the equipment to and from the location, like backdrops and lighting equipment, which sometimes can be quite large and heavy. And this should be definitely thought of ahead of time. For your budget considerations, you need to include things like the venue, any travel costs, and make sure you include all of the people involved, including any stylists or makeup artists, include props, special equipment, catering, and post-production costs as well. I was on a photo shoot in Europe and wanted to book a testimonial shoot during the lunchtime. And I was told that this just wasn't possible. And what I learned from this experience was to be culturally sensitive, even with your own crew. And it really comes back to making sure that you have a mutually agreeable timetable and that everyone has seen it prior to the shoot. Place. When you organize your shoot, you need to think about the location. So where will it be held? Does it need to be indoor, outdoor, or in a studio? Very importantly, can you get the product there? If you're using models, is the location accessible to them as well? And it's good to think about how far everyone is going to need to travel and if there's parking close by. If you're hiring a studio or location for the shoot, I would advise seeing it in person beforehand. So either you or the photographer can see it in person and have a look at the backgrounds and the lighting. If you're shooting a video as well, is there background noise? So you could go and have a look at the location and recognize that there's actually a major road nearby and there's traffic noise. So I would really highly recommend having a look at the location in person if it's possible. Remember, if it's an outdoor shoot, you really are at the mercy of the weather. So consider this in your planning and make sure you've got a tent, an umbrella, or a backup wet weather option available. Even an indoor photo shoot could be impacted by the weather as well, because it can have an effect on natural lighting. So be mindful of the choice of rooms and time of day that you choose for an indoor shoot. I worked at a hotel, and when we were conducting photo shoots, if it was in the morning, I'd have to book it on one side of the building. And if it was in the afternoon, I'd have to book it on the other side of the building. And this was just because that's where the light was coming in through the windows. So it is really important to check out the venue beforehand and know how the light is going to work. An essential part of any photo or video project is getting your people in place. And there's a lot of people to consider in a larger shoot. So depending on the scope of the shoot, you might only need one photographer and you can be the lighting assistant, or you may need a whole team of people. And you need to know who will be preparing the product to be photographed. Will you need a model or an actor to demonstrate your product or play a character in a video? If you choose to include a person in your photo or video, they need to be briefed on what to expect, what you expect from them, depending on the role that they're playing in the shoot. So be sure to communicate with them about what to wear, what time you want them to arrive, and then that also you'll need to consider, is hair and makeup a requirement then as well? And there are other aspects that can be quite easily forgotten, like who is welcoming people to the shoot, who's welcoming the models and settling them in and guiding them through, and even who's going to unlock the studio, who's going to let you in. If you're inviting someone to take behind the scenes shots, are you going to do this or is someone else? Are you going to ask a colleague or have an assistant do these sorts of things? So it's really important to really consider all of the people that you may need for the shoot. In regards to actors or models, I really highly recommend having a talent release form because it's an important legal aspect to any photo shoot. A model or talent release form is a written and signed agreement between the person who's being photographed and the photographer in order to protect against any legal claims like defamation or invasion of privacy at any point in the future. Most professional models and actors are used to signing these, and photographers and videographers will usually have these on file, but if they may not bring it unless you request it. So make sure you request that they bring one beforehand and even have a look over what it says. I actually had an experience where a model called me about 2 years after a shoot because we were still using the photos and asked to be paid again. But they had signed a release form, which included a clause saying that they would receive no further payment after their initial payment. So I feel like that really highlights the importance of making sure that you have those legal aspects looked after. So it's your product's time to shine, and you want to get the most out of your time on the shoot. So it's important to plan how your product will be portrayed. For example, if your product comes in different colors, do you need to shoot them all? Depending on the product type, will the product need to be prepared beforehand? And this could be really relevant for food items. If the product has accessories or special features, you'll need to plan how you want to work these into the shoot. An easy way to highlight the key features of any product is to take photos of them being used. And this will highlight the product's value. If you're filming a testimonial about someone's experience with the product, make sure you've prepared the questions well in advance and sent them to the person being interviewed. In my experience, there's a lot of back and forth between the person being interviewed and the company about the expected responses in the interview. And I'd always recommend having a number of people available to give testimonials, just in case you don't get the content you're looking for in your first interview. One of my favorite parts of attending shoots is either coordinating or just watching the styling of a shoot, because it can really elevate a product image to make it more engaging. And props can really help tell a story to your audience. Of course, it does depend on the style of the images you're going for. If you're looking to go beyond just showing technical aspects of your product, make sure you assemble a prop box or two prior to the shoot with all of the props you might need. You can use this cocktail image on this slide as an example. The image is of a drink, but the tea towel and the watermelon and the mint sprigs, the lime, the ice, the cutting board, even the color of the table that it's on, really makes it more engaging and enticing. And as a consumer, I get an idea of what the product tastes like. So I worked with a great photographer in Australia who came to a shoot with what I would call a prop library. So she came with bags full of cutlery of different colors, old and new, brass, gold. She would have steak knives with wooden handles, with metal handles. She'd have different plates and different glassware, and lots of different tea towels. And big cutout wooden boards painted with different colors and in different textures that could be used as backdrops or flat lays. And the photos that came from that shoot were really engaging because of the way that they were styled. And we also saved time because everything was there and everything was ready. We didn't have to run and go and find some ice or go and find this, that, or the other, because it was all ready to go. So you've prepared everything, you've gone through the 5 Ps, and it is the big day. It's really best to arrive early because things don't always go to plan. And it ensures you're in a good headspace. And it's always better to have a little bit of time up your sleeve. Ask the photographer if you can look at the photos early on in the shoot. This way you can direct them back on course in the beginning if they're not quite hitting the mark on your vision. If you do this 3/4 of the way through the shoot and start looking at the photos then, and they're not quite hitting the mark, then you've wasted a lot of time. So make sure early on in the shoot, after a couple of photos have been taken, you can take a look at them and just make sure that they are in alignment with your vision. On the day when the creative juices are flowing, it's tempting to go off on a tangent when a great sequence of images are happening. And sometimes these are the best photos. But if you take extra time on some images, remember you're foregoing others. And as a rule of thumb, it's best to stick tightly to the timetable to leave you with the results that you really desire. So there you have it. The 5 Ps of product shoots: preparation, place, people, product, and props. The 5 Ps are going to help you maximize your return on investment, get the most out of your time and money, and end up with the most engaging photos. Thanks for joining me.